Hi, Hunter Hastings here. We often idealize a firm that's driven by subjective value, compassion, empathy, and the entrepreneurial spirit. And sometimes it isn't ideal, hard to live up to. But today we're going to talk to a leader who actually is executing all of those principles in practice and growing a terrific, customer-respected, successful business on that basis.
This is the Value Creators Podcast. Value creation is the sole purpose of any business and every business, and for all of us as entrepreneurs. Listen to great value creators as they share their successes, trials, and lessons learned. Join us as we explore how to think as value creators, how to act as value creators, and how to view business through the lens of value creation.
His name is Mike DeKock. He runs a very special consulting company called MJD Advisors. He's a UT grad. He is a founder and a CEO, and he's incredible testimony to what's possible when the regime of subjective value is applied without limitation and with great enthusiasm. Mike, welcome to the Value Creators Podcast.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to meet you and to have you as our guest. We talk a lot about subjective value and subjectivism in business, which means putting the customer first, thinking about their feelings and their needs more than just spreadsheets and numbers and quantitative analysis. And we find from your website that your company thinks about that, has been thinking about it for a long time, and actually implements those kinds of principles in the marketplace. So you apply that mindset, you apply it in B2B, which is really, really hard. You're in a very highly technical and regulated area of technology, compliance, and data security. So it's trebly a challenge to do what you do. So that's what we'll talk about today and about your company. So let's start with the business field, Mike, which is SOC Compliance. I honestly know nothing about that. So tell us about the field and how it's grown and how you entered it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the intro. It's a lot of the things you just touched on are stuff we're really proud of and are trying to get better at. So MJD Advisors is a licensed CPA firm. We specialize in a service that's called SOC 2. If you think of just kind of at its core, what an audit does, what a traditional financial statement auditor does, is help people exchange information. You produce a financial report, you have it audited by a third party, so a bank or an investor can make decisions based on that information. SOC does the exact same thing, but it's more specific to a little more subjective subject matter. And so it's setting criteria around expectations for data security, which are set by a customer. And then we are hired to come in and validate that, the way that the things that they're committing to in terms of how they're keeping customers' data secure, that they're actually operating on those commitments and holding them accountable to it.
Okay. Is it a requirement, a regulatory requirement that clients have this SOC audit and report, or is it optional?
It is not. It's optional in the same way as I said, kind of a financial audit is optional. If you want a loan, the bank's going to make you produce an audit. In the same way, we primarily work with small, growing startup software companies. And so very common use case is they have a purpose-built tool. They want to work with a much larger enterprise to kind of meet that enterprise's needs for due diligence. They say, we need to see your SOC 2 report so they can evaluate kind of the controls and how they're keeping care of their customers' data. And so that's when we get called in, is really to meet that need to kind of unlock that sales due diligence process.
So it's a standard in the industry, even if it's not a legislative standard. Is it constantly changing? It sounds like it might be. There's continuous updates.
It is. I mean, in terms of the CPA profession, it's very new. I mean, it's only been in the last 10 or so years that you've seen growth, and the professions are, over 100 years old. And so that side of it's constantly changing. I think as people become more educated about data security and what these audits mean and how they all work, that's where the real change is coming in, is really on that education side, as they're able to get more value out of kind of the product, the end result is where you see a lot of it. But also just with so many of the controls and things that we're auditing, technology focused. So it's all this automation artificial intelligence is starting to enter the picture, and it's kind of understanding those tools and things that they're doing and how those impact kind of the program as a whole.
So you're an entrepreneur, Mike. You've entered this fast-changing, adaptive area where there's an opportunity, there's a need on the client's part. We say that entrepreneurship performs best when there's a subjective value, and you've described all the the technical kinds of needs there. But you say that what you deliver to your clients is confidence. And I really wanted to drill in on that because that's the essence of a subjective need. It's about how they feel. And so I'd like to know how you developed that as your benefit idea, how you came to it, and how it became the center of what you do.
Well, and a lot of the ways that I talk about it with our people, and even as I just kind of think about it internally, is if we're able to give our clients the tools to be effective in this journey, then our job ends up being easier on the back end. That it is if we're able to meet in the middle, that there's a meeting of minds of this is what we need to audit. Here's some suggestions on what you can do. When we have that trust, when we have that relationship, it's a much simpler life for an auditor. And so it really starts there. And the other side of it is I just found myself working with people with PhDs from MIT and Harvard and law degrees, and they're starting these very, very complex AI startups and are looking to me for anything was always kind of amazing and incredible. But being able to help them solve this very specific problem was something, I took a lot of pride and passion and enjoyed doing. And it never occurred to me that like giving those people confidence was even, it seemed like the natural kind of approach to the service.
Mm-hmm. But the confidence you're giving them is in their relationship with others, right? That they can go to their customers or their clients or their business partners and say, hey, we've got this SOC2 audit and we're trustworthy and reliable.
Well, it's absolutely. And a big part of, and again, with any audit is it's reducing that uncertainty of knowing that the information that these people are providing has been validated, that they have a third party standing behind them that is saying this is accurate. This kind of meets the general best practices and needs, and helping them understand what that means and being able to really operate and live within it instead of it just being a piece of paper and a box that was checked. There's a lot of intrinsic value and business value that comes with that.
Yeah. So we always like to think about how you develop those value propositions, as we call them. Is that the result of a lot of research? Is it conversations with clients? Is it just understanding the field of play? Is it your gut? How did you get there?
So, I mean, this really goes back to, I started my career as a financial statement auditor and really went into the field merely because that's what my dad did. And I didn't really know what else to do. I would describe myself as a CPA that didn't really enjoy accounting. And I did, but more than anything, I enjoyed working in teams and helping people. And I saw SOC as that opportunity of there weren't a lot of people doing it. It wasn't quite in the niche of what a CPA is comfortable doing. And so there was an opportunity to kind of stand out. And really when I dove into that opportunity, I've spent 6 months at least understanding, okay, these engagements, these projects take 18 months. They're costing, $30,000 to $50,000. It's providing tons of value, but by the end of it, everybody was kind of miserable. And if you just think of like how to audit a control, it's really, was this piece of paper checked off? Is this turned on? It's like, it takes a second. And so when you dig down and understand where all this time and stress was coming, it was all the exchange of information. And it had nothing to do with the compliance. It was two parties that didn't understand what the other person needed and just kind of the tools that they had at their disposal to exchange that information. And that's as I probed and just understood, just trying to figure it out for myself. It was like a problem. It was like an itch that I couldn't scratch. Also really found that people embraced having me ask those questions, that because they knew I was trying to solve this problem, and it wasn't because it was just as intimidating as any audit, I would say. It's this auditor coming in and trying to understand what you're doing, but they really embraced it either because they knew it was a problem that they thought I could solve for them, or they were really proud of the things that they were doing and wanted the chance to show it off. And so like figuring out that stage was really a big part of all of this.
Yeah. Well, let me just drill a little bit into this confidence area. So, I have the imagination that a light bulb goes on in your head and says, it's confidence. That's what they need. And as you said, all of these high-tech AI startups, and you've somehow got into their emotional areas, their areas of fear, perhaps, or some kind of feeling. We use the term empathy, that you get there by empathy. They can't tell you that. They're not going to tell you, hey, I'm really worried about my compliance status. But empathetically, you can diagnose that. So I'm just wondering whether you had that kind of insight.
It's absolutely. And that's, the way that I personally experience problems. It's not so much that I can't solve them. It's that I don't have the tools at my disposal to solve them. That's when I become very uncomfortable. And so kind of experiencing that with my clients, with my partners, with my staff, of just not knowing what you're supposed to do and being able to unlock that for them, it's really exhilarating. And that's kind of where I get my goosebumps. Like, some of the best value I can provide is by telling someone something they don't have to do and explaining options around that. And what often happens, because a lot of the work that we do is it's very subjective of, do we have to do X for this service? Like, there's not a list of requirements. It's background checks is a really common thing that people ask. Are we required to do background checks? And the answer is always no. But here's some options to think about. And here's kind of how you can evaluate whether this makes sense for your company, and then set them up to make that decision, which that's how I've kind of come to my own answers personally, and something that I enjoy, as opposed to just guessing, which feels very uncomfortable. And so that's kind of what I've tried to instill with clients as well.
Yeah. Yeah, helping people through uncertainty that's a huge benefit. So one of the things we run into a lot when we talk about subjective value as a goal, Mike, is, well, how the hell are you going to measure that? If your product is confidence, where's your confidence meter? How do you find out whether customers are feeling more confident they were yesterday, or sufficiently confident, or 9 out of 10? How do you measure it?
It's ultimately the deliverable that we provide is very much a commodity. It's this report. It's this very objective based event. And so that's success. But then just in terms of measuring, exceeding expectations, are we hitting the mark? It's in the reviews we get. It's in the success stories we hear from clients, of whether it's business that they've won, which often it's just the paper that we've provided to them. It's the report. We didn't have anything to do with it. Or it's the things that they've sent reviews of MJD, and some of the way people champion us. It's not so much the 5-star reviews that I get excited about. I have one client that wrote, if for whatever reason my grandmother ever needed a SOC 2, I would call MJD. It's the stories like that where they also felt like they could trust in us as a firm to be able to even just share that. That's when I know if we're hitting the mark or not.
That's great. That's one of the measurement concepts in this area. Is it's got a horrible name, Net Promoter Score, but it's if your client would say, I'd recommend this service to another company. So it's passing it on one step. That gets us to another term which you use in some of your materials, Mike, which is trust. So confidence is a feeling that the customer has about themselves because of your service. But trust is a feeling that they engender in their customers. You can trust us because we've got this report from MJD. So is that something you can measure? And is it something your clients feel? Is that tangible? Hey, I've become more trustworthy. Can you describe that?
It's tangible is hard, right? And being able to measure the success and what success is attributable to our report is really hard. And that's what we're also doing. No one is working with one of our clients because they have a SOC 2 report. They're working with our clients because they have an amazing software product, where they can kind of measure and think about that as kind of how they're able to get their software into their customers' hands. and how much faster that sales cycle has gone and connected to the SOC 2 report. And more often than not, it was either table stakes to make that deal happen, which is happening more, or it skipped a lot of the kind of due diligence questionnaires and back and forth feedback that you'd have to do with an individual customer because you kind of did that collectively with an auditor.
Yeah. So there's an element of that which you say you kind of change the character of your clients, or at least the projected character. They become a company that is communicating its commitment to this area of data security. Hey, we're the kind of a company that you can trust because we demonstrate our commitment because we've got the MJD SOC 2 report. So you're changing the character of your clients in a sense, or their image to their customers. Is that how you see it?
I like to hope so. I mean, I think that's the ultimate dream, maybe setting the bar a little high for expectations there. I think the most, they're selling a product that requires trust for people to use it. And so, yes, any role we can play in that sales process, I mean, in crafting that messaging is that's an absolute kind of huge home run for the firm. But more than anything, I mean, I think it's positioning them to be that best version of themselves and being able to share that with the world.
Yeah, and you kind of give a mark of approval for that. This is the credibility of that statement.
Yeah. We're able to provide them a document that, a third party licensed and registered firm and business has followed these list of requirements to be able to say this is accurate, and it tells the story of, for a security team, the work that they're doing throughout the year, and to present that to their customers, to be able to give them that look behind the curtain, so to speak, operationally, that previously didn't really exist. That there was a curtain that was held up.
Yeah, in fact, the other note I made to myself is you've raised the expectations in the marketplace, because where there used to be uncertainty about issues like this, data security and how firms handle it, you can now change that. And so expectations are everyone's going to be buttoned up. You've raised the level of expectations in the marketplace. That there has been tremendous growth in this space, and that's a really big part of it, is that the tools and the people that are supporting kind of these initiatives are no longer, as I said earlier, 18 months and $60,000. Like you couldn't, if you wanted to work with a small software company, you couldn't ask them to go do that because it would cripple them. But now being able to enable and kind of making compliance available to all, it raises the expectation. It sets accountability throughout the organization. It does a lot of it provides a lot of different benefits to the ecosystem. Absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful. And so I'm going to move on to the next step, which is what's the business model or business approach that gets you to excellence in this service area? We have this innovation concept, Mike. We call it NABC. So N is the need, and we've talked about that, the need for confidence, the need for trust, the need for reliability. A is the approach, which is the business model. How do you do that? And something I picked up from your materials is we MJD, become an extension of the client's compliance team. That sounded like a business model to me. So how does that work? How do you become an extension of their team as opposed to just an outside service?
Generally, what you do with this service is it becomes an annual report that you have to continually update. So you're able to demonstrate, on this continuous basis, we're continuing to operate these controls. And that's really what our focus has been and will continue to be, is how can we embrace that continuous compliance approach and be accessible throughout the year for that guidance and assistance and help that we did initially as a resource, both to be able to, we have a problem to solve. I want to make sure I'm going to pass my audit, but also be able to, share similar stories that other startups, kind of how they're solving their problems, and be able to kind of have that network impact effect on our clients. So that it's like the idea of a continuous audit is definitely not something I'm going to try to sell, but a continuous relationship that doesn't, that eventually the audit kind of falls out of all the good decisions and processes and operations you're doing throughout the year, and being able to support that instead of just that validation role.
Yeah, you nailed another of our principles there, Mike, which is a problem to solve is not a need. So the problem to solve is I got to get the audit done, but the need is much more in the area that we talked about trust and confidence and so on. So you've got to do both. You've got to solve the problem, but you've got to elevate it to that higher level.
Well, and quite honestly, the problem is not that challenging to solve. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do it, and just the getting through an audit, so to speak, is not a tremendously high hurdle. And so, however we can use that as a means to elevate the business in other ways, I kind of tend to believe accountability is also drives organizational improvement. And so kind of if we use it as a tool for that, as opposed to just, as you said, focus just on the report, just on the audit, there's a lot of value we can create in supporting them that way.
Do you ever find that some companies just see the audit as a cost? They don't understand the benefits beyond the cost? Absolutely.
And we work with some of them. I would say that we've got an amazing group of clients the relationships we have are astounding, and kind of the interactions we get to have with our clients. But we have plenty that see us as an operational event, and we want to serve them too. And by keeping our process as simple and as streamlined, avoiding getting in their way is part of the value we can provide as well. And so I don't provide different service models. Everybody gets the same approach and has access to the same resources, but there's certainly those that don't seek all of the magic. And we also do a lot of work and focus to try and channel to make sure that we're working with and talking to kind of the companies that see this our way.
Understood. So we call that the B is greater than the C. The benefits got to exceed the costs, and the client has to understand that. So that's a little bit of communication. Let's turn internally. You clearly, from everything that you've written and what's on your website, you've internalized this idea. You say your company is passionate about exceeding client expectations. You bring enthusiasm to compliance, which is not a combination of words you often see. That sounds like you got a great spirit and purpose inside the company. So you've been able to communicate all of this to your employees and your team.
We approach compliance in the same way as any product, and think of it as a craft as opposed to, again, that coming to find problems and coming to challenge and focused on issues like that. That's another method of providing an audit that's needed in certain circumstances. But when you come at it with relationships and opportunities to work with, some of the most exciting and cool and interesting tech companies in the world, we do build a lot of enthusiasm towards that.
You could call that a culture, and one of the aspects of culture is bringing in people, hiring new people to add to the team. You had an interesting statement about in your hiring, you reject hard stats and you try to hire interesting people. So that was another element of subjectivism that we found in what you're talking about there. Mike, tell us about interesting people versus hard stats.
I have a real hard time with resumes. It is the best version of that person that they want you to see. And quite honestly, the work that we do, it's so different from a traditional CPA firm. It's very different from just that auditor mindset. And then also the technology and companies we're working with changed dramatically. The tools I'm learning about today are going to be different in 3 months. And so the history is not nearly as important and not nearly as valuable as the future. I don't think that's a controversial way to look at it. And so what we've found is, how can we build the most kind of diverse, interesting, engaging group of people that are going to be curious and challenge how we're doing things today, so we can continue to get better. And that's really hard. We've had some recruiters that it probably drove crazy as I tried to give them specifics on what I wanted. I want my favorite right now is, I want, if you look at their LinkedIn profile, I want something that is surprising. Just one thing, or just something that is I can ask this person about this thing. And so this person speaks Russian. spent a summer abroad, or military backgrounds is something that we found really interesting with people who all travel. It's something, maybe not specific, but something, some specific passion or interesting thing about that person.
Yeah. And that gives you a door you can open in conversation to probe that interesting area, right?
We spend a lot of time together, solve a lot of problems together. What's most important to me is enjoying the people I'm interacting with and having them make me better. I've prioritized that over, again, that kind of resumes and history has kind of been the approach I've tried to take.
Yep. So you've got a line on your website that says, helping clients find simple solutions to complex problems. I just wanted to get into how you think about that, Mike. Complex has become a kind of a buzzword these days. There's a whole field of science called complex adaptive systems. And the whole point about complexity is because it can't be analyzed. It's got so many interactions of different parts and trends and patterns that it defies analysis. So what are you thinking when you say you can help clients find simple solutions to complex problems? Tell us about that.
I've always been one to celebrate the beauty of simplicity. Has always been, an approach I've taken to life. And that was, the idea of complexity is something that really built up to me thinking all this was possible with MJD. It was people were looking at this service, this challenge as complex. Again, building a tool that's using generative artificial intelligence, or working with some large enterprise, exciting company. The work that we're doing is not complex. That's complex. It's really all just about interpreting and kind of understanding the information so you can make decisions. And once you distill it in a way where they're not guessing, where you can kind of design, here's the challenge. Here's 3 things that have worked for clients. Here's the pros. Here's the cons. When you're able to bundle that up for bright and engaged people, that's what I kind of celebrate. It's not so much trying to solve the problem for them, but giving them the tools to make those decisions and kind of find those answers for themselves, because they're in a better position to do it than me in all cases. And so whatever I can do to help them get there is much more. There's much more value I can provide that way than introducing my own requirements.
One of the parts of complexity is that the future is always going to be unknown. It's always going to change. So you said earlier that one way to look at what you do is it's a checklist. Is this turned on? Has that step been taken, and so on, which I'm sure it's far more complicated than that. But it must be true in these high-tech companies that they're always creating something else. Hey, there's a new thing to turn on. There's a new step to find out if we've taken this whole area's changed while we weren't looking. Is that part of complexity for you?
It absolutely is, and that's something I really enjoy. It's people have very low expectations for my technical skill, and so the CPA auditor, which, and maybe they're right, but that challenge, I've always been good at living up to low expectations. That challenge has always been something that I've lived up to, and I've operated well in. And I think the other thing with approaching an audit with curiosity and working with people and asking them those sorts of probing questions about just how does this work? Why did you adopt that? Why didn't you use this tool? People love that stuff when you're able to put them on a stage and be able to explain the decisions that they've made, the things that they're passionate about and that they're invested in. And so that's been kind of the best way I've been able to learn, is through clients in that way, of being willing to ask those types of questions, potentially make myself look foolish, but also knowing that they understand this is not my realm of expertise, that I serve my own purpose, and they're here to help me kind of round out the rest.
Yeah, it's highly collaborative in that sense, the division of labor sense of it. We always try to capture this idea, I call it the entrepreneurial ethic, that you work hard to build a great firm, give great service to clients. If you're successful, you'll build market share, you'll make money, you make profit, and so on. But there's kind of a personal fulfillment in helping clients and in making a difference for them, helping their business. Is that a description of how you feel? Can you Maybe you can phrase that better than I can. I'm just trying to capture this feeling of the entrepreneurial ethic.
I think you did, as I've kind of experienced it. And I had never intended on running a business. I thought I would work for traditional CPA firms my whole life. That's what my dad did. He provided very well for us. The excitement and kind of thrill that I get is in those client stories, in those client reviews. It's someone sending me an email of some challenge in their business that they unlocked and that they're thankful to me. That's just in terms of growth and money and all these other things, I have plenty of that. It's those kind of stories and relationships or what I get excited about and feel really lucky that I found just kind of an industry and a time to be able to help people with that.
Yeah. So the subjective value for the entrepreneur as well as for the client. That's how we like to wrap that up. Well, Mike, thank you so much. We talk conceptually all the time about this qualitative, subjective value approach to business. You personify it, you implement it, you've done it, you're really successful at it, your clients benefit from it. It's a wonderful thing to hear about. So thank you for sharing.
I enjoyed this. I learned a little bit myself as you were describing theory, and just am so thankful to have been on. So thank you very much.
This has been another episode of the Value Creators Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can visit thevaluecreators.com for links and resources related to this episode, and check out hunterhastings.com for more content on entrepreneurial business management based on value creation principles.